Welcome to Women in the Arena podcast, the podcast celebrating women doing extraordinary things in plain sight. I'm your host, Audra Egan, and our mission is to elevate the value, strength, and resilience each woman brings to the world. Without further delay, let's go ahead and start the show. Welcome in, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me again this week. This week, I have quite the young woman with me this week. She is brave, she is strong, and she loves to push the boundaries. My guest this week is Lauren Cunningham. She is an amazing testament to having the ability to stretch yourself and grow and discover what else you can do. She is a native of Tennessee. She lives on a lovely farm with her family, and she has a degree in accounting. But all of those things are the least interesting things about her. She's an entrepreneur. She's also a fellow podcaster, which I'm so excited to talk to her about. And she's an explorer. She's an explorer of what she can do and also helping other women to discover what else that they can do as well. It is my pleasure and my honor to introduce to you Lauren. Lauren, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Wow, thank you. That was such a great intro. I'm so happy to be here.
I am really excited for you to be here. I have said many, many times that I am such an admirer of young women, millennials, Gen Zs, because you have this ability to be fearless without questioning yourselves and without being burdened with, gosh, I should do this because I think I'm supposed to. And you just go for it. And you're a great example of that because you studied something that people would think, oh, this was such a smart move. That was so smart because who's not going to need that? So you have a degree in accounting, and that is really where your journey started, with this accounting degree, doing what you thought you had to do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I for sure thought that I should do accounting because there was always going to be a job out there for me. You know, that's what I was told. And it's true. And there's not at all knocking accounting. I have a lot of my friends are still working in accounting and they're having thriving careers and they love it. So it's not a bad career. It also taught me a lot because I know a lot more about business than the average person just because I'm an accounting major and I worked in accounting for a little bit. But yeah, I think my story kind of starts a little bit before that because in college I was plagued with a lot of health problems. And so I actually had to drop out one semester. And I think that was when I was like, I just need to hurry up and pick a major because I had already missed a semester and I didn't want to be even further behind. And so, which is such a silly mindset. Like, it doesn't matter if you graduate in 4 years, but it did at the time to me. And so I, just hurried up and picked a major and just went with it. And I enjoyed it. I liked it during school. But yeah, that is definitely not what I'm doing now.
You were brave enough to go and discover other things that you might be good at. And it was because of your struggles with your health that encouraged you to step out of what the mindset of this is what I think I'm supposed to do to what else can I do? What do I want to do? So how did you start that next step? I mean, you graduated, you're like, I have this shiny new degree. I'm an accountant. Yay. And you go out and you start with accounting and you go, this may not be for me.
Well, I think, again, it kind of starts a little bit before that because I had always been interested in health and wellness because I have Crohn's disease. And so I was diagnosed my senior year right before I graduated high school with Crohn's disease. And I had been having stomach problems before that. I would just have weird stomach aches and nobody really knew what was wrong. And so finally was diagnosed after probably about 2 years of being undiagnosed and just not knowing what was wrong. And then college started. I was in the hospital, kind of in and out of the hospital that first semester, and then ended up dropping out that second semester to have 2 surgeries. And I was on IV nutrition at my house. And I think I was in the hospital for like 2 months at one point. I had a secondary situation pop up. It was not good. And so I went back to school. And like I said earlier, just kind of wanted to be normal and just pick a major and just do college and everything to be back to normal. And so then when I graduated, my health wasn't great, but it wasn't as bad as it was. But I was having some flare ups, and I just always been interested in health and wellness. And I remember, like, on my lunch break when I was working in accounting, I would just search like certifications that I could get, or what can I do with, I don't want to go back to college, but I would if I had to. And so I'm like, what can I do now? I have an accounting degree. What is the next step? And so I would just constantly search, different things that I could do, different avenues that I could take with health. And finally, I landed on the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. And it was honestly the perfect timing. I feel like people don't usually say that COVID was perfect timing, but it was for me because my immune system is suppressed. And when COVID hit, my doctor was like, you need to stay home. And the accounting firm I worked for couldn't really let me work from home. And so I ended up just quitting because I was getting my MBA, and I had just started my health coaching school literally the day that the country had shut down. So it all happened all at once. And I was like, I'll just be a student again for a little while the world works itself out with COVID. That's kind of when my interest in health really peaked because I'd always been interested in it. I'd always done like essential oils and some holistic things, but the Institute for Integrative Nutrition was such a great place for me to just explore and experiment with different health techniques and learn more than I had ever learned before about health.
So I have actually also said that COVID was a gift. It didn't look like it at the time, but there's definitely some silver lining there. And it gave you an opportunity to rest, number one. It gave you an opportunity to come home and isolate yourself since you were immunosuppressed. But two, also go and explore some things that you may not have done had you had to go to work every day. What, from being in that institute, what did that lead you to next? You have a fascinating journey of going from a road that is well-traveled to this adventure that is most definitely off the beaten path, but most assuredly more fulfilling than anything that you had experienced before.
So the program was 1 year long. So I knew I had a year to kind of figure out what I wanted to do with it. And to be quite honest, I really just started there to see if I could heal myself. I was able to do a lot of healing. I ended up going into remission, which was the first time I had gone into remission non-surgically. And so I was like, I feel like I'm on to something. Like I have to share this with people. And so about 6 months into the program, I think they tell you create a website, start seeing if you want to take on clients. And so I did that. I kind of followed their instructions on that. And I had a website and I started posting recipes and I started creating recipe ebooks. And it was very fun, but I could never really figure out. And obviously looking back, it's so much clearer now that I just really didn't want to do it, but I could never figure out how to take on one-on-one clients. And I think it was just because I truly didn't want to do that. And that model just didn't work for me. And it's funny because I just interviewed a holistic, she actually went to the same school I did. She's a holistic health coach, and she does take on one-on-one clients. And it's so cool how you can do such different things and still have gone to the same school and have the same certification. And so it does work for some people, but for me, I just didn't love that model. And being in East Tennessee, it's not the most health conscious. It's not like we're in LA, like we're still in a very rural area. You're just limited with local patients that you could take on or local clients. And so I ended up deciding that I was just going to try the recipe development thing for a little bit. So I was creating ebooks, and I ended up sending out an ebook that I created. It was like a spring meal plan, and I think it had like 45 recipes in it. And I sent it out to like probably 50 different influencers, like hoping that one of them would just share it or talk about it or use it or enjoy it, and obviously got a lot of no replies. And I got some replies saying, thank you so much, but no one shared it except one girl did email me back and say, hey, thanks for sending this. Would you want to develop recipes for my fitness app? And I was like, well, okay, I guess this seems kind of in line with what I'm doing. And so that was kind of the start of that part of my life. I ended up developing recipes for about a year and a half, and that was like all I did. And so I got to just be in the kitchen all day. It was a lot of fun. And then obviously I'm not doing that anymore. I got a little bit bored. I tend to get a little bit bored sometimes with things. I don't stay in the same place for too long. But yeah, so that was kind of what I did with that health coaching certification. And it's funny because, like I said, you can have the same certification as someone and do totally different things. And that is something they preached with that certification, was like, you can do anything with this. You know, some people are going to go on and not use this as a career, and they're just going to use it in their families, you know, and in their homes. And so that's kind of why I chose that program to begin with. But yeah, I developed recipes for a while.
First of all, that's mind-blowing because it's completely the opposite side of the brain. You go from something that's extremely structured, very linear, to something that is totally creative. You're creating it out of a space of all possibilities, and you made it something that was marketable. Somebody wanted it. But what I also think is interesting is that you had this creative journey, had a lot of fun with it, and then you knew when it was done. And then you knew that you're like, okay, this was fun, but what else can I do? And then you took a step that many would be like, how in the world did those two correlate? But you did. You took a step towards wellness, but in a completely different capacity.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, like doing something completely opposite. And I think oftentimes we have a tendency to almost overcorrect. And so I think that's what I was doing with this, was like, okay, I'm in a career that's very analytical and I didn't love it. And I really wanted somewhere to channel my creativity. And so then I just went the totally separate, direction. And then I realized that while I do enjoy creative work, I also enjoy strategy and that analytical. I mean, I wasn't miserable while I was majoring in accounting. Like, I liked it, so I like the number side of things. And so I got the opportunity last year to be a social media director for a medical aesthetics company in Knoxville, which is where I'm from. And I thought, this could be really good. I can do it sort of part-time, and I was still developing recipes, and I was like, I think maybe this could progress into something more. Maybe I'll take on other clients. Maybe I'll get promoted in the company. Who knows? So I just took the job because I was looking to get out of recipe development. I didn't have anything else lined up. It seemed like a great opportunity. The people were awesome to work for. And I was like, I think I can do this. Like, I have experience creating reels. I have experience on social media. So why not try this and just see if I like it? And now I've been there a year and I absolutely love it. And I've been promoted to director of marketing. And so now it's more of a full-time thing, which is so fun. And I really love it. And I love what I do. And I love that I get to use the sort of more analytical side with the strategy and all of that stuff that I learned like when I got my MBA. Then I'm also getting to use the creative side of my brain when I create social media stuff and graphics and come up with ideas for social media. So it's been a really fun transition.
I think it's an amazing transition. And it was a strange way for you to get there at this long road of discovery, but you found a way to marry both your analytical side with your creative side. And as I said in the beginning, you were brave enough to lean into it because you could have just stayed in your lane, but you were brave enough to lean into, well, what else can I try? What else can I do? And then you actually stepped out one more time out of your comfort zone and started a podcast, which I can attest is not an easy feat. When I started my podcast, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know how to put together a podcast. I had to ask my son how to do it, who is the same age as you, on how in the world, how do you put together this podcast? But you took your creativity one more time and said, I want to talk to other women, which is near and dear to my heart. And you started a podcast called So Can I. So first of all, what is So Can I? And second of all, what was the motivation to start this platform?
So Can I is just a place where I interview female founders. Hopefully, my goal is that all of my guests listen to the episode, and when they finish listening, they're like, oh my gosh, if she can do that, then so can I. And so that's kind of where the little tagline comes from. But as far as starting the podcast, I think we said recipe development was the opposite of accounting. I think podcasting is actually the opposite of accounting because I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't even know, knew nothing, truly, like no audio. I had no idea. But what's funny is about 3 or 4 years before that, 3 years, I guess, when I was still in college, I had told my friend, I was like, I think we should start a podcast. And she was like, what? Like, what in the world would we talk about? And I was like, I don't know. I love podcasts. I love listening to them. It's just a really cool medium to communicate with people. And I think we should start one. And obviously we did not start one. And I'm glad we didn't because I'm sure it would have been awful. But I'm glad that I kind of waited and marinated on that idea for a couple more years. And even, so I started it in June of 2022. So just last June. But even before that, in like the fall of 2021, I was thinking about starting one and it was going to be more health focused. And while I was excited about the idea of having a podcast, I was not really lit up about the topic. And I was just like, I don't know, like, I'm just not sure what I should talk about. I definitely wanted it to be interview style because I didn't want it to just be me blabbing. That's like my worst nightmare. So I was like, I don't want to just be the one talking. So I'm like, well, I guess I could interview health professionals, people that I've met through the school that I had attended, but I'm glad I kind of waited on that and just kind of thought, who do I want to interview? And so I ended up making a list. And this was before So Can I was even the title. So I ended up making a list of women that I'd hoped to interview. And I'm like, what do they all have in common? And for the most part, they were all founders, either of blogs or businesses or whatever it was. And so I was like, wow, I think I want to do one that's more business focused, but more in like a female aspect. And so I again sat on the idea probably for longer than I should have. And I read a quote and it was like, if she can do it, so can I. And I was like, that's what I'll call it. And, because I wanted it to be something that was a little bit catchy, but not too cheesy. And so I finally came up with the title and waited again about 4 months because I was nervous, but then finally launched it in June of 2022. And it's been so much fun.
Well, here's a little hint into podcasting. Even though I've been able to do this now for 3 years, I actually waited 6 months before I launched it because I was nervous, because I was freaking out thinking, who's going to listen to me? Why would they listen to me? What do I have to say? What if nobody wants to come on the show? All of this stuff just sort of sat in me and percolated in me. And then I thought, well, why not? I'll give it a shot. What's the worst that could happen? And the worst never happened. All of that was all in my head. But I love that you named it So Can I, because you are your first test case. You are absolutely your first test case because you went and tried all these things. You were brave enough to try the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And that was what impressed me the most when I first met you, is that you were so fearless and thinking, well, why not? Why not give it a shot? What's the worst that could happen? I find out that I don't like it. I find out and it doesn't work. I don't believe in failure, by the way. I only believe in learning opportunities. The only true failure is not trying. That's the only way you can absolutely fail. Everything else is just learning all the ways not to do it. Really. So I like I said, I love the name So Can I. I'm curious, are there any famous people on your list that you want to interview? Because I have a couple on mine.
I mean, gosh, off the top of my head. So I'm a huge Housewives fan. Love Bethany Frankel. She's probably at the top of my list. I don't know why, but Jenna Bush Hager just came to mind. Don't know why, but that may be her. Gosh, Reese Witherspoon. I don't know. Yeah, just throwing it out there.
I mean, these are amazing female founders that have stepped out of comfort zones and had most definitely stepped out of pathways that they could have stayed on, but they didn't. And one of the things that Lauren and I want to impress upon everybody is that just because you think it's not what you're supposed to do or not what you studied or not even what is in your job title doesn't necessarily mean that it's not for you. And the other thing is that just because it already exists out in the world, it doesn't mean that you don't also have space to do it. Before Lauren and I came on the air, we discussed that we are both podcasters, both female podcasters, and we interview other females. And the whole point behind it is to learn and empower and demonstrate that we're way more similar than we are different. We just do it in slightly different ways. But there's room for both of us because there's only one Lauren Cunningham and there's only one Audra Egan. And we do it in really different ways and we embrace each other. I love what Lauren is doing because it's such an amazing, beautiful journey that is so encouraging to me. And I find it so fascinating. And I want to be brave like Lauren. I want to be brave like her all the time because I have a tendency to get in my head. And maybe Lauren wants to be more like me, where I am a little bit more regimented and linear. Who knows? But we're both here to encourage each other, but we're also here to encourage you. That's the point of our interview today. And I had asked you who the famous people were on your list because I want to share with you the famous people are on my list. Maybe we can get them together because you never know who's listening. So I'm going to share with you the ones that are on my list. The woman that's on the top of my list, the woman that I've been wanting to interview before I even thought of a podcast, was Viola Davis. What do you think of Viola?
Yeah, no, that would be awesome. I love her.
And I have another one. She is from your home state. Can you guess?
I'm going to go with Dolly Parton.
Dolly Parton. Because she's an amazing founder. She has created so many things. She's also created jobs. She's created charities. She's given away 1 million books around the world to kids that couldn't otherwise afford books. So she's on the top of my list as well. And then I have a couple of others which are absolutely, completely selfish on my part. One is Ina Garten, and I know you know who Ina Garten is because, I mean, it's Queen Ina.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you were a recipe developer. You absolutely know who Ina Garten is and probably love her as much as I do.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one is Joan Jett because as a teenager, she was one of the only female rock stars that I was able to see because there weren't very many female rock stars in the early 80s. There just wasn't. There was just a handful of them. And she was fearless. She was absolutely fearless. At least she appeared to be fearless and was running her own race. So these are the four because they all are doing the same thing. They're all running their own race. So if you had a chance to talk to any of the women that are on your list, what would you say to them? Let's take Reese Witherspoon because I also adore her because she's a wonderful founder because she took a left turn. She's like, acting's great. What if I created my own stuff? So let's start with her. What would you ask her?
Oh my gosh. Well, you kind of honestly probably touched on it a little bit because I love my podcast is kind of all about and it didn't mean to be this way in the beginning, but taking that turn. You know, most of my guests did not start out as the owners of a shoe company, you know, like they didn't start out that way. And so I think I just always love, and I'm very fascinated with that, just like, why did you do this? Like, why shoes, you know, for instance, or why whatever, why would you choose to do that? And with Reese, I love her book club. I think that I'm fascinated by that. And I know you and I share a love of books.
Yeah.
And so maybe something about her book club. I feel like that's such a cool thing. You know, I think I would ask her, how did you build that? Where did that idea come from? I mean, I'm just fascinated by people who do things outside of the box and do things differently and definitely take that step where you're like, whoa, I didn't expect that from her, but I'm happy that she did it.
And the way she did it was so brilliant because I've read an article about her that she's a book lover, just like you and me. And she went out and she specifically looked for books that were written by women. And then the ones that she liked, she optioned for movies or TV shows or whatnot, which was also brilliant because there weren't very many people that were out there specifically looking for female authors, that stories that you could tell somewhere on screen, whether it be the big screen or the small screen. And she was really smart and went and did that. And now she is a billionaire up there with Oprah. She may not be making Oprah money yet, but she will. But you're right. She did it by stepping outside of the box and being a little fearless. Because how many times do you think she was told no?
I know. I have a fascination with people that just do it their way, and not in like a, people who still stay humble. And so not in like an egotistical thing, like, oh, I'm just going to do it my way, but like people who don't really take no for an answer and think, well, I love this and I love what I'm doing and I want to do it this way, so I'm gonna. And so I think she's definitely one of those people.
How many times have you been told no? Or that's is nuts? Or what are you thinking? How many times has that happened?
Oh, a lot. I actually have, and I hate that I just started this, but earlier this year, I have a folder on my email and it's just called No. And I just archive all of the responses that I get that are like no's or not right now's. And so I wish that I'd done that with recipe development because I got so many no's with that, but it really doesn't matter if you get the few yeses. I mean, like when you're starting a career, you don't need 100 yeses. You really just need one, but, 2 or 3 are good too, but, you really just need that one yes. And I think that that's a little bit of what sets me apart. And I don't know why I'm like this, but I really don't care to hear the word no. Like, I'm just like, it doesn't bother me. And so, I don't mind when people say, you're not a good fit for this, or maybe later, or not right now, or I'm not interested. And, I get it a lot with my podcast because I do reach out to people who probably would never come on my podcast, but it's like, I don't care if they're going to say no, that's fine. Some of them have said yes. And so that, that's kind of what makes it worth it.
Yeah. The power of yes is amazing. And I think secretly some people don't ask because they're afraid of being told yes. I don't think anybody's afraid of being told no because they kind of expect it. But then there's people that say yes, and you're like, okay, what do I do if they say yes? What do I now I have got to show up and put my money where my mouth is. I think my personal opinion is I think more people are afraid of that.
I actually interviewed a confidence coach one time, and she said that more people are afraid of success than of failure. And I totally see how that can be true. I mean, it can be, when I started the podcast, I know you had said you struggled with like, well, what if nobody listens? And it's like, well, yeah, that's what you struggle with. But then when you start it, you're like, oh my gosh, what if people listen to this? And so it kind of flip-flops and you're afraid almost of it being something. And so I think that's, something that even to this day that I struggle with. I don't let it control me, but, I'm like, oh my gosh, well, this episode got however many listens. And it's like, I can't believe that many people are listening to my voice. That's a little scary. And so it is scary, but I think having a healthy fear of it is good, but not letting it kind of like control you is the goal.
It keeps your feet on the ground. That type of fear keeps your feet on the ground and keeps your head out of the clouds. What always gets me is the country count. Because when you go to your dashboard and you look and see downloads and whatnot, and that's always wonderful and exciting. It's wonderful to see what people like to hear and what people are like, not so much. I mean, and there's all kinds of different things and there's all kinds of different people, which is why you got to put everything out there and see what happens. But the countries is what I go, oh my gosh, my voice is around the world. So I don't know if you've looked at how many countries that your voice is being heard in. When the last time I looked, which was probably earlier in the week, maybe last week, I can't recall, it was 73 countries. I'm like, oh my gosh, 73 countries. People are hearing my voice and hearing a message that I've shared with them and my guest message. We've shared a piece of ourselves around the world. That blows my mind. What have you experienced when you look at this and go, oh my gosh, what am I doing?
Yeah, no, it's wild. I even remember dating back to like when that first episode came out, I was like, I didn't even know a goal really to set because I'm like, I have no idea who's going to want to listen to this. I mean, you and I are kind of, we're normal people. Like we didn't have a following beforehand. So, you have people who have hundreds of thousands of followers, and I'm sure they have huge lofty goals when they, start a podcast. But for me, I was like, well, I don't know who's going to listen to this, but we'll see. And I remember getting like, I can't even remember, like maybe 25 downloads of that first episode. And even with that, I was like, 25 people listened to this? Like, that is kind of crazy. And so, yeah, the last time I really looked at the countries and states, I was wanting to make a map because I was like, oh, this will be cool. I'll make a map of the 50 states and color in when I get, a listener from that state. So this was in March. And so I guess I had the podcast for like almost 10 months, 9 or 10 months. And I was going through and like coloring, and all of a sudden I'm like going through all this and I'm like, there were only 2 states that there hadn't been people streaming the podcast in. And I can't remember, I think it was like South Dakota and like Virginia. It was super random.
Well,
And
nobody lives in South Dakota anyway. Sorry. I mean, there's only
apparently
like
not.
5.
Yeah. I know. Yeah, I know. It made me want to drive through there and download an episode while I was in South Dakota. But, and then I think I didn't look at the specific countries, but I remember that I was in every continent except for South America and then Antarctica, obviously. But yeah, that's wild that it spreads like that. And I remember talking to somebody beforehand and they were like, you're going to hit a point where it's more like exponential growth and not just like that steady climb. And I feel kind of like that's what's happening. And a lot of people, I think, measure growth by like Instagram followers. And I just think with a podcast, that's really hard because you're not going to get a lot of Instagram followers with your podcast. It's not going to correlate to downloads for sure. And so I've seen where I'll look at my episodes and like, let's say an episode of the week I'll look on the day it's out and it's gotten 200 downloads. And then I'll see but my downloader was like 500 downloads. And I'm like, well, where are the other 300 coming from? And it's like people are binging the podcast. And I'm like, oh, so like certain episodes almost every episode will get 3 downloads. And I'm like, these people, somebody is downloading each episode of the podcast, which is a really cool thing to look at. And so, yeah, I don't look at my growth metrics too much because I have an obsessive personality and I feel like I'm going to like refresh all the time. But I do try to like glance at it every week, and it is fun to see it go up.
Yeah, it's in the beginning I looked at it all the time. Now it's just intimidating because it starts to rob joy from the process, and I don't want it to rob joy from the process. And because I don't want to get so caught up in the metrics that I forget the purpose. And the purpose is definitely not watching metrics at all. I've learned a lot by interviewing all of these women. In the last 3 years, I've grown a lot. I've changed a lot. The things that I've been able to accomplish because of this, because of stepping outside of my comfort zone, has blown me away. What has surprised you about doing this really out of the box thinking of, I'm going to just interview women, as many women as I can? What has surprised you?
Well, I think that I started this because I'm so multi-passionate, and I think I thought like, oh, this will be a great avenue to kind of like get to hear other careers, but no, it makes me want to start a shoe company. It makes me want to start a jewelry line. I'm like, oh, well, if she can do it, so can I. And so after every episode, I'm like, maybe I should do that, but no, so that has been surprising because I thought that would almost curb my passions a little bit, but no, it's made it 10 times worse. And I think that I can do everything now, but no, I think that what has surprised me a lot with interviewing everybody is that everybody has the same pain points. Everybody has the same victories. Everybody has the same fears. They're just a little bit different and tailored to the career that they're in. And that's been something, and I say it so many times on my podcast, but a guest will say something and I'm like, that's a common theme on here. Everybody says that. And so I think that's been the most surprising is just how similar everybody is. And I think people, even in the world today, just really crave community. And so, I think that's also been surprising. Like I just emailed a lady today to be on the podcast and she was like, I've binged all the episodes. She's like, I went on a deep dive and I've binged them all. And I just never thought that she would be a listener. I thought she was just going to be a guest. And so it turned out that she had already listened to the podcast. And so I think there are just surprising things all the time. I'm constantly surprised by the podcast. It's always unexpected. I'll have technical problems. That has surprised me how hard it is to start a podcast and deal with technical issues. But no, I think there's just so many surprising things. I think so many common themes, and it's just been so fun to really realize how connected everybody really is.
And this is a great medium to do it because, COVID demonstrated how separate we can get. But this is a medium to bridge all of those gaps and unify everybody in our similarities, which that is also what I've discovered. I have interviewed women all over the world, and we all have very similar fears, similar goals, similar desires, similar insecurities, and they're all the same themes. And what I have been trying to impress upon everybody is a couple of things. One, step out of your comfort zone, which is exactly why, Lauren, you and I are having this conversation, is stepping out of your comfort zone and going and exploring what else you can do. The other thing that I've been trying to communicate as best as I can is other women are your best assets. You don't have to like everybody, but you do have to recognize other women are going through similar struggles as you, and they are not your competition at all. That is a big, giant lie. It isn't there because it's meant to distract us and separate us. Because the reality is, if that was all gone and we all worked to have each other's backs, oh my gosh, that first of all, the world would be a much nicer place. But we would also be a whole lot happier too, because then we would have the knowledge that there's, regardless, there's someone else out there, there's another woman out there that knows exactly how I'm feeling, and she's got my back. And that is power.
Yeah, absolutely. I had interviewed, like I said, a confidence coach and then also a business coach. And they both said similar things, that their group programs were the ones that were the most successful. And it was because they put a group, and they only coached women in these group programs. And they would put the women together, and everybody had common fears or whatever, but everybody was able to encourage each other. And so, yeah, I think that encouragement, which is really the reason that I started my podcast, I wish that, 4 years ago that someone was interviewing health professional that had been an accounting major, and I could have listened to that and been like, oh, wow, like I'm not different, or I am different, but not in a bad way. And so, yeah, that's kind of why I started it, was just for encouragement and to encourage people to, not to just stop your career that you're in and do something different if you don't have a backup plan. But if you have an idea and you have a business that you really want to start, just do it. And that's something that most of my guests say. I always ask for advice, and they say, just do it. You just have to do it. You just have to take that first step. And so, yeah, I think encouragement is just huge for women.
Of all the guests that you have interviewed, who's made the biggest impression? Or I should say, is there one that has stood out to you and went, oh my gosh, my life has changed because I got to meet this woman?
Oh my gosh, that's a hard question, because I feel like so many of my guests have made that impression on me, but I'm actually about to do, for not next week, but the 2 weeks after that, which I don't know when this is going to come out, so this will probably have already happened, but I'm doing at the end of August, beginning of September, I'm taking a 2-week break from releasing episodes, and I'm releasing, or not releasing, but basically re-listening to episodes. So I'm going to kind of like promote older episodes that were so good, but just didn't get a ton of eyes on them because the podcast had just started. And so I was actually going through all of my guests that I've had. And so I think I've done 68 episodes at this point. And I honestly think, and I feel like it's going to be cliche to say this, but episode 1 was with Stephanie Mae Wilson. And I don't know if you know Stephanie, but she lives in Nashville, and she just was, and I think maybe the reason she made such an impression on me was because I had literally never interviewed anybody before. And she was so just like easygoing, made me feel comfortable. She has a podcast, so I think that helped. She kind of knew how things worked, but I still think that interview is one of my best, and it was my first one, which is so crazy. But she made a huge impact on me because she just, she's just such a great speaker. And I actually felt very prepared. And I asked a lot of what I thought were really good questions. And then she gave me even better answers. And so I think that that's kind of why she left a lasting impact on me. But someone else as well, her name's Emily Landers, and she has a podcast called How'd She Do That? And she was one of the first people that I reached out to. I think she was episode like 5 or 7 or somewhere in the beginning there. And she has left just a lasting impact on me. We still keep in touch. And so, it's just nice to have like mentors in that space. So I look at her as more of a mentor in the podcasting space. We're very similar. And so, yeah, but I mean, all of my guests, I feel like I've just been privileged to interview so many amazing women.
Has this collective of interviewing these amazing women, and it is absolutely a privilege to be able to tell these women's stories. That it humbles me all the time that I get to do this. But this collective that you have amassed with your guests, how do you think it is impacting you with your desire to continue to grow and expand and be fearless in discovering your gifts and who you are and what you want to do, and more importantly, what you don't?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it impacts me every day. I look at the community that I've built, and even on the days where it's hard, I'm like, well, I can't stop now. I mean, there's no way that I can I've already interviewed all of these amazing women, and it's funny because there have been times where I'll have an interview lined up and I, to be honest, won't be that excited about it. And I'm like, I don't know if she's going to be a good fit. And then it ends up being like an amazing interview, not because of me, but because of her. And it's just times like that where I'm like, wow, there are so many people out there that, so many women out there that have businesses that are just waiting to talk about them. Everybody loves to talk about themselves. And that's why I think people love to come on podcasts. And so, but yeah, I mean, I think that hearing their stories, because all of my guests are extremely brave. And I know you've said that about me, and I so appreciate you saying that. But I think I get a lot of that bravery now just from hearing the stories of moms starting businesses while they have a 2-year-old on their lap during COVID. I mean, like, it's crazy stories where it's like, there's no way that person will succeed. And then they defy all the odds and they succeed anyways. And so I think that is kind of just the driving force in keeping this going. But I also think that I do have an amazing collective of guests, and I'm so privileged to know them and still keep in touch with a lot of them. But I have a lot of great listeners too that I still don't know why they listen to me. Sometimes I'm like, I don't know why you're listening to every episode, but thank you. And, they'll message me after each episode and they're like, this was such a great one. So enjoyed it. And it's just little messages like that that are such a game changer. And it's like, oh, all that work was not for nothing. Somebody got something out of it. And so, yeah, I think those are kind of the things that keep me going.
It's funny that you say that you question yourself of, should I keep doing this? Is this thing on? Does this even matter? Is there a point to continue to do this? And because I have all those feelings too, all the time. And every time, at least for me, every single time where I start experiencing all these feelings and emotions, somebody reaches out to me. Every single time that says, thank you so much for doing this. It meant a lot to me. Or even more so is that I started out as an audience member. Will you consider me as a guest? Those are the ones that keep me going, because it is a gift. Like, Lauren, you're giving me a gift of your story. You're giving me the gift of being able to share it and hopefully encourage one woman or man, because I do have a few brave men in the audience, that can hear it and go, this young woman was brave enough to lean into having enough faith in herself that she has the ability to do more than what she went to school for. And if she can do it, maybe I can. Or maybe they listen and they are motivated to go listen to your show. And then there's a woman that they hear that did something to the title of your show, So Can I. And they think, well, if she can do it, so can I. Nothing stopped her, so there's nothing that stops me. Or maybe they hear the stories of, there's, like I had made the point before, there's multiple of us doing similar things. but we're doing it in unique ways because it's absolutely impossible for us to do the same thing exactly the same. Because as one of my previous guests have said, we are 1 in a trillion chance. You are a 1 in a trillion person, as am I. And if what we do helps one person listening, then all of this is worth it. Every single bit of it is worth it. And here's another secret. I have no idea where it's going. No clue. I have never dreamed that I would be here, and I have no idea where it's going. But that's also the exciting part too, because it's kind of a mirror of life, is that I had all these plans, none of them worked, but some of the things that did happen were even better than what I could have dreamed for myself.
I love it. No, I totally agree. I think, you didn't ask me where I'm going, where the podcast is going, but I'm going to tell you. And you know me because I don't know, like who knows where it's going to go. I think that's the exciting part about it. And, I want to do so many different things with it. Some days I'm like, oh, it would be cool to have merch, or, to have some sort of, because I do interview a lot of women who have clothing lines or shoe lines or jewelry lines or whatever. And I'm like, it would be really cool to kind of have like a, so can I, not a store, but not like a storefront, but, an online place where people can shop my guests, and like just a collective of everything that they've done, the books, just all of that stuff that they have done. And so, yeah, I don't know. I really feel like the sky's the limit, but I'm also okay with where it's at right now. I'm trying not to get too far ahead of it and just know that like I'm in it for the long game. I don't want to get too fatigued or tire myself out by trying to do too much right now. And so just kind of letting it grow and continuing to get it in other people's ears and, continue to have great guests on. I'm booked out pretty much through the holidays at this point. And so it's like, I don't know. I don't know where it's going to go. I'm excited though. It's only been a little over a year. And so I look at people, my mentor, like I mentioned, Emily Landers, she's been at it for over 3 years now. And so it's fun to look at her show because we have very similar audiences. And so it's fun to look at her show and just see what she's done and be like, oh, well, if she can do it, then so can I. And so I'm just excited to see where it goes.
And I'm excited for you because that's the fun part. You have no idea. You have no clue. But it's the fun journey along the way. And that is what I have learned specifically in the last 3 years, is to enjoy the ride. I had one of my dearest friends who was one of my very first guests. I think she was the first guest. After I put out the very first show, she very gently says to me, Audrey, remember to enjoy the ride. And I looked at her and I'm like, you're crazy. Because I'm a type A personality. I'm like, I have this goal, I have this goal, I have this goal. I've got to do this, done, this and this and this. And she's like, that's not the point. I said, what do you mean that's not a point? She goes, that's never the point. The journey is always the point because the journey is all we've got. And that's why it's fun to go take detours and go figure out what else you're good at. And also be brave enough to walk away from things that aren't serving you.
Mm-hmm.
And that, like I said, that is why you're such a encouragement for me, why you inspire me, because you figured it out early, really early. You are in your mid-20s and you have figured that lesson out very quickly. I am 52. I didn't figure that out until these women that I've been able to interview have changed my life. And I've been able to reshape my perspective and see what else I can do. So first of all, I want to thank you for being here, and thank you for being an example of a woman that is brave, that is not afraid of trying new things, not afraid of doing things and it not working out, not the way that you planned, and continuing to grow. So that's the first thing I want to do, is I want to thank you for doing all of that.
No, thank you so much. You're so kind with all of your words during this interview. And no, it's been such an honor to come on your show. I love your show. And so getting to be a guest has been so fun. And yeah, I hope that when people listen to this, they're hopefully inspired kind of by my tagline, if she can do it, so can I, because I truly do believe that. And I want to be an encouragement to everyone. So
if people wanted to listen to your show or reach out to you, do you have a website? Is there a platform? Where's the best place for them to reach you?
So my podcast is called So Can I, and we're on Instagram at So Can I Podcast, which that's probably the best way. I do have a website. It's laurencunningham.co. It is still a health website. You can definitely reach me on there. So my email's on there. It's hello@laurencunningham.co. That will hopefully be changing soon. I'll be updating it to kind of reflect more of what I'm doing now. It's just when you're the website developer, it takes a little bit of time to do that. So I'm going to hopefully catch that up with kind of what I'm up to now. I think there is a podcast tab on the website though. So yeah, but find me at So Can I Podcast on Instagram. And so that's kind of where I hang out on socials. But yeah, please message me, email me, whatever. I would love to connect with your listeners.
Well, this is the opportunity where I get the chance. This is part of the show where I get the chance to step back from the mic and give you an open forum to leave a final lasting message with the audience without me interrupting. So the floor is yours.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you. No, this is like my worst nightmare. I told you I hate being at the center of attention. No. But wow. Yeah. You have such a great show. And I love that we got to kind of connect. And, hopefully we'll get to connect in the future on other things. And, yeah, I just hope that whoever's listening knows that, if you are doing something that you are not happy with right now, or you're in a career where you feel stuck, you're definitely not stuck. That's kind of how I felt, years ago. That's even how I felt with recipe development a little bit, and so I think just knowing that you have all of the tools and all of the power to do something different. I mean, we live literally in the information age. If you don't know how to do something, then it's kind of your own fault. Google it, look up a podcast. I mean, there's a YouTube video for everything. And so, don't use that I'm stuck mentality to stay somewhere where you don't want to be. So, use the tools that are around you, use the people that are around you. People love it when you ask them for help. I mean, generally speaking, like if you're an expert in something, like they love it when you ask for help. I was asked just the other day by one of my mom's friends to help her with her social media. And it was like flattering to me. I wasn't annoyed that she asked. And so ask for help and, just really try to go after what it is that you feel passionate about. Even if that's not a business, it can be a side hustle. It doesn't even have to be a side hustle. Maybe it's just a hobby. Maybe podcasting will never make me a cent. It doesn't matter. I like it. I enjoy it. And that's how I feel like people should kind of frame what their next is. So, you don't have to start something for it to be a job. It can truly just be a hobby, something you like to do. And so, yeah, hopefully that people who listened are a little bit inspired by, the If She Can Do It, So Can I. And hopefully you guys will listen. I have so many amazing women on my show that have come on and just blown me away. And so they've been so inspiring. So if I'm not inspiring, trust me and go listen to my show because they are inspiring. So, but thank you, Audra, for having me. And it's just been a pleasure getting to chat with you.
It has been a pleasure and an honor to have you here. And thank you for doing the work that you do and putting a little bit more positivity out into the world, because the world needs more and there's not nearly enough. So thank you for doing the work that we all need.
Thank you so much.
And I want to thank all of you once again for listening, and we'll see you again next time.
This is just the beginning.
That's our show. I am so grateful for each and every one of you and your unwavering support and your continued belief in this movement that has become much bigger than me, much bigger than just a podcast. It has become this forward momentum that we are all doing together. If you are ready, or you know somebody that is ready to tell your story and share your value with the world, please connect with me. You can reach me at audra@womeninthearena.net. I am so honored and thankful that you will share your story with me, and I'll make sure that it is well taken care of. I will never stop thanking each and every one of you, and I cannot wait to talk to you again next week as we share another woman's story and we celebrate her doing extraordinary things in plain sight. We'll see you next time.